Hello everyone, how are you? I'm Bruna, and this is your channel for Turkish series summaries. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. Continuing with the summary of episode 381, at the end of the first part, he was recalling everything that happened to her after she left the hospital, where she successfully tricked Fifi with a fake abortion. She chose to continue her life with the baby she was expecting, alone, leaving the entire Dermal family behind. In the first part, I mentioned that Ira began working at Ekta's house as a maid. Ekta wanted to register her, but Ira refused to hand over her documents because she didn't want him to know that she was the ex-wife of Orhun Dermale, a powerful family. Even so, Ekta hired Ira to work, though without official registration. One day, while Ira was cleaning the garden, another employee of Ekta started harassing her. Ira confronted him and ended up getting injured. Despite this, she fought back and tried to escape, but the man grabbed her at that moment. Ekta arrived and attacked the assailant. At the hospital, after some exams, the doctor informed Ira that her pregnancy was now at risk, and until the baby was born, she couldn't do any physical activities and needed complete rest. Ekta told Ira he hadn't known she was pregnant. Ekta took her home and began taking care of her. He then proposed a deal. Ekta had always dreamed of being a father and wanted to raise her baby as if it were his own. He suggested they get married in a fake marriage, only on paper, so they could both fulfill parental roles, allowing him to achieve his dream. At the same time, Ira would have shelter, food, and a home for her child. With few options, since she needed rest and had no family or support, Ira accepted Ekta's generous proposal, which came at just the right time. As soon as Ira returns to her thoughts, we fall right into the moment when Orhun asked, "And did you get married?" Ira shifts her attention and responds, "Yes, I got married." She looked at Orhun with a gaze full of hatred because in her mind he had sent Fifi to help him get rid of the baby in her womb. For that reason, Ira feels a deep anger toward Orhun, believing that at one point he wanted to take her baby away. We know this is not true, but in Ira's mind, this is her reality, and she harbours much resentment toward him. Angrily, she affirms, "Yes, I got married." Orhun then tells Ira that he came there because he wanted to see her. At that moment, Sarah approaches and asks Ira why she hasn't come inside yet and who she is talking to. A few seconds later, Ekta arrives and asks Ira if there is a problem. Ira responds to Ekta that everything is fine. Ekta then picks up Sarah and begins to care for her in front of Orhun, who watches the scene with deep sadness. He wished he could have that life with Ira, and the child could have been his, even without knowing it. Sarah then informs Ekta that her ball rolled into the street and that her mother went to get it. Realizing it was already late, Ekta tells Sarah they need to go home. In truth, Ekta wants to take Ira and Sarah away from Orhun's presence. He places his hand on Ira's waist and, along with Sarah in his arms, leads them back to the mansion. Orhun feels even sadder watching Ekta take Ira and the girl into the house, especially when he notices that Ekta is touching Ira's waist. This scene is intensely sad for Orhun because not too long ago he had hoped for that life. Orhun watches the scene for a few minutes, and as Ira enters with Ekta, it's noticeable that she feels slightly uncomfortable with Ekta holding her waist, particularly due to Orhun's gaze. It's clear that the relationship between Ira and Ekta is built on trust limitations. Minutes later, Ira, Sarah and Ekta sit on the porch of the mansion and begin to chat. Hira is silent, extremely thoughtful. After all, it had been 6 years since she last saw the love of her life. Her hands are trembling and she is very nervous because Orhun's presence shook her. Then Sarah asks Ira who that man was. Ira begins to answer, but at that moment, Ekta interrupts, telling Sarah that the man was no one and asking her not to worry, as she would never see him again. Ekta sends Sarah to her room, and as soon as the girl leaves, he asks Ira why Orhun was there. Ira cannot answer Ekta's questions because she is too nervous. Ekta then asks if Orhun came for Sarah. Ira gets a little irritated by the question and responds that Orhun Dermale will never know Sarah as his daughter. She explains to Ekta that Orhun had just found out she got married and came to confirm it. Ekta, for his part, states that he will never let Orhun take their daughter. He makes it clear that he won't give up custody of Sarah. In fact, Ekta is there for the girl, as he apparently loves her. The series does not show Ekta having romantic feelings for Ira or wanting her as his wife, but he shows respect and takes care of her since she lives with him. His love, as it seems, is genuine. As soon as he left Ira's house, Orhun went to the beach deep in thought and sad about everything he had just witnessed. He began to recall some moments he had shared with Ira in the past. When he comes back to reality, he feels even more distressed and considers throwing Ira's wedding ring into the sea, but at that moment, he changes his mind and puts the ring back in his pocket. Meanwhile, Ira and Ekta are playing with Lego with Sarah on the mansion's veranda. However, Ira can't concentrate on the game because she can't stop thinking about Orhun. This distraction is making Ekta quite uncomfortable as he notices that Ira's thoughts are focused on Orhun. His fear is that if Ira decides to go back to him, Orhun will likely assume paternity of the child. In the meantime, Orhun returns to the Dermal mansion. As soon as Fifi sees him, she asks where he was, but Orhun doesn't reveal anything to her. Fifi informs Orhun that a welcome party has been arranged in his honor to celebrate his innocence and release from prison. However, Orhun tells Fifi that he has no interest in attending any party. When he arrives, he is filled with rage and hatred for everything he witnessed. In a moment of reflection, he says to himself that everything they are celebrating is his fault, as he was the one who took Hira out of his life. At that moment, Daphne enters Orhun's office and asks if he is okay, showing concern as she notices that the place is messy and the mirror is broken. However, Orhun doesn't answer Daphne's question and starts muttering to himself that all of this is his fault. Daphne then questioned whether Orhun went to see Ira, but again, he didn't respond. She then mentions that he needs to review some documents to reassume responsibility for the Dermally companies, but Orhun remains silent, ignoring her. Daphne tries to cheer him up, saying that everything will return to normal and that, with time, he will recover. However, Orhun doesn't pay attention to what she says. Even so, Daphne manages to convince him to go to the party organised by Fifi as a welcome. Her goal is to become the future Mrs. Dermyle. Meanwhile, Ira spends time with her daughter, but she is struggling to stay strong and composed as she feels destroyed inside, with an overwhelming urge to cry. After a few moments of holding back her emotions, Ira can no longer resist and the tears begin to roll down her face. Sarah then asks her mother why she is crying. Ira hugs her daughter and says, "Please don't cry because of me." And Ekta, watching the scene from afar, murmurs to himself, "I'll do whatever it takes to keep Hira from getting upset." After some time, the day begins to darken and the party organised by Fifi comes to an end. Daphne and her older sister are talking about the event, and Daphne's sister advises her to do everything she can to win Orhun's heart. She warns that if another woman enters the picture, it will be very difficult for Daphne to convince him to marry her. Daphne becomes nervous and anxious at her sister's words, knowing they are true, but she has no idea how to approach Orhun's heart. She realises that he still loves Ira. Meanwhile, Orhun gazes at the garden, fixing his eyes on the spot where the plant symbolising his love for Ira once stood, the plant of sensations that the old man from the cabin gave to her when they both helped him. At the time, the man told Ira that as long as that plant and... However, Fifi had the plant removed as soon as Orhun was imprisoned and Ira left the mansion. Now, the seedling no longer exists. At that moment, Fifi approaches Orhun, having noticed that he is sad. Fifi then asks Orhun what he is celebrating and why he is so sad. Orhun responds that he is having trouble adjusting to his new life outside of prison. Fifi tries to comfort him, saying that with time he will get used to the new people in his life and that where he now sees darkness, soon everything will become a new light. She adds that as long as he doesn't lose the joy of life, everything will work out. Meanwhile, Ira is sitting in her room, very sad, thinking about the moment she reunited with her love after so long. Ekta knocks on the door and enters to talk to Ira. He asks if she is okay and if he can talk to her for a minute. Ira replies that she would like to be alone, but Ekta says he just wants to support her. Meanwhile, Orhun moves from the garden to his room, reliving memories of the time he spent with Ira. He sees her in every corner of the house, like as if she were there, talking to him. In his mind, he visualizes her in a white dress, smiling at him. Orhun ends up spending the whole night thinking about Hira, unable to sleep. And when the day breaks, he starts thinking that he can no longer live in that house, as it is filled with memories of him and Hira. Orhun goes to the mansion's living room, where Fifi is sitting, and asks her where she put the photos of Hira that she took down from the house's frames. Fifi replies that she put all the photos in a box and hid them about 6 years ago. Orhun then says he plans to leave and travel for a long period. Fifi comments that travelling will be good for him and asks how long. Meanwhile, Hira is in the garden, very sad. Hector approaches and says he would like to take a walk with her so that she can feel a little better. At first, Hira hesitates to accept the offer, but at a restaurant, Orhun and Daphne are talking. Daphne asks Orhun which country he has decided to travel to. Orhun replies that he doesn't know yet where he's going. Daphne, trying to help, suggests that Sri Lanka is beautiful this time of year. Orhun then asks Daphne if she has already calculated her fees. Orhun tells Daphne that he needs to pay her. Daphne then reveals that she has decided not to charge legal fees and asks Orhun to consider her work a gift. Without hesitation, Orhun pulls a cheque from his pocket and tells Daphne to write down the amount she wants for the services rendered. He emphasises that she is a family friend and that he is aware of this, but work is work, and therefore he needs to pay her. Daphne, with a smile, writes a very low amount on the cheque and hands it to Orhun. He insists on paying the real amount, but she reaffirms that this is the only amount she wants to receive. Without further insistence, Orhun accepts and pays Daphne only what she asked for. Meanwhile, Hector and Hira decide to have lunch at a restaurant. To their surprise, they end up choosing the same place where Daphne and Orhun are. As soon as they arrive at the restaurant, Hira reminds Hector that the first time they had lunch there was to celebrate Sarah's birthday. Hector, in turn, replies that he brought her to this place in the hope that she would feel a little better. However, just as Hector was about to enter the restaurant, his phone rings. He steps away to answer the call. Hira ends up entering the restaurant alone, and as soon as she steps inside, she spots Orhun. Both are surprised to see each other. The reservation was made under Hector's name, and their table is right next to where Orhun and Daphne are seated. What a coincidence! Hira tries to switch tables, but unfortunately she can't, as the other tables are already reserved for other customers. Thus, Hira and Orhun end up sitting close to each other. When Hector arrives at Hira's table, he is shocked to realise that Orhun is sitting with his back against hers. The tension is palpable. Hira, feeling uncomfortable, tells Hector that she tried to change tables, but there was no availability. She then asks if she should leave. Hector, however, responds that his friend Esaret should be arriving soon to talk, so they can't leave. As time passes, the food starts to be served at both tables. Daphne, noticing the situation, asks Orhun for permission to go to the bathroom. At that moment, Hector's phone rings and he steps away from the table to answer the call. With that, Hira and Orhun are left alone at their tables, back to back, in a silence filled with unspoken emotions. Orhun then tells Hira that he is leaving for a faraway place, and thus it will be as if he never left prison. Hira, in turn, responds that it doesn't matter because he has already left her life. Hira stands up and tries to grab her purse, but it ends up getting stuck on Orhun's chair. She begins struggling to free it and leave the place. Orhun, noticing that she is trying to grab a purse that got caught on his chair, stands up and hands it to her. At that moment, Daphne exits the bathroom and sees Orhun and Hira side by side. From a distance, she starts to lose her composure. Meanwhile, Hector is talking with Esaret outside the restaurant. Esaret informs Hector that the company's partners have found out that they funded the ship with the purpose of stealing the gold. Hector then starts to get nervous, aware that his partners are dangerous. He tells Esaret that he needs to flee as soon as possible and mentions that one of his partners is already in the process of finding out the truth. Hector explains to Esaret that he needs to escape because otherwise his partners will kill him, as well as his family. Esaret then leaves. At that moment, Hira approaches to talk to Hector. He, in turn, tells Hira that he needs to flee because his life is in danger. Hector reveals that he spoke to the mansion's maid and that she has already packed their bags, bringing Sarah along with the luggage so they can head straight to the airport. Ira questions Ector about why they are fleeing and says that if he escapes, he will be considered guilty. But Ector, deeply worried, doesn't care about what she says. He then tells Ira to get in the car. At that moment, two armed men try to force Ector into another vehicle. Ector then pulls a gun from one of the men's waist and starts shouting for them to back off. He then flees, leaving Ira behind. The men start running after Ector, while a third man, who was with the other two, tries to force Ira into the criminal's car.
But at that moment, Orhun was leaving the restaurant with Daphne and saw Ira being forced into the car. Without hesitation, he moved to help Ira and, in an impulse, punched the man, leaving him stunned. At that instant, Ira exclaimed that her daughter was in danger. Orhun then took Ira to his house in his car. Upon arriving, Ira began searching for Sarah in all the rooms but couldn't find her. Meanwhile, a man appeared and started attacking Ira. But at that critical moment, Orhun arrived again and began beating the attacker. The man then fell to the ground, incapacitated by Orhun's blows. Orhun, worried, tried to calm Ira, who was in a state of shock. At that moment, the maid of the house arrived with Sarah, revealing that she had hidden the girl in the garden when she noticed the presence of the criminals. She then handed Sarah over to Ira. As soon as Ira saw her daughter, she hugged her desperately, thanking God that she was safe. However, at that moment, the man who had fallen unconscious on the floor woke up. He pulled a gun from his waist and aimed it at Ira. In a matter of seconds, a shot was fired. It was impossible to know who had been hit by the bullet. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.